cult members, and welcome to Pop Culture Cult. I'm Sean.
I'm Janice.
And welcome to our spoiler reaction review of episode 3 of The Last of Us. This one is called Long, Long Time.
Long time ago.
Ago? Does it say long, long time ago on
I
it?
think it was ago.
Long time.
Okay.
Long time ago.
Yeah.
That's all the singing I'm going to do in this episode.
20 years.
It's
long
it's a
time.
20-year thing. Okay, so let's start off with I'm going to talk about Ellie and Joel and them walking down the road and coming across the plain. They showed that in the first episode, and that was a little bit of a change from the original game. Oh, by the way, spoilers. Uh, and her talking about you got to fly, and him saying, "Well, you paid $12 for a sandwich and sat in the middle of the row and had to fight for an armrest."
Yeah.
And it was a nice little moment of levity to show the things that we find frustrating in our modern mundane lives that are actually really kind of important and cool and neat.
Yeah.
That Ellie never got to do because she was born after the initial
wave
and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And I like that they spent that moment to kind of explain that, and then they also kind of spent—I almost say kind of—they spent time talking about how the infection started.
Mm-hmm.
Now, we know it is flour.
Right.
But in universe, they don't know for sure. Because each of the different places are having, it's probably like that game of telephone, right? Where it's somebody says it's flower, and the next person hears it's a flower, it must be a daffodil.
Yeah.
And then somebody heard it's a daffodil, and they hear it's...
The bees infected
right,
flowers, and yeah.
Right. So I love that they spent that time there too, just kind of like explaining what some people may be questioning, the actual how did everything happen so fast. And they don't need to explain. They don't need to explain it because it's not really explaining the game overly. Like, that's not what the game is about. That's not what the show is about. So the catalyst is the infection. And it's what happens 20 years after the infection and how people are living is what this show is about.
Right. The aftermath. Yes.
But I'm really glad they waited till episode 3 to tell that, to spend that time to say, hey, this is where we know people are going to have questions. We're going to spend this time to talk about it and everything. And then they come across a mass grave that Joel explains to Ellie that was the military rounding up people in small towns, telling them they're going to go to the QC, and then just doing mass murder because the QC couldn't handle
any more people.
Yeah. And this is not an unknown thing. This is something the government would do.
Oh, yeah. I mean, and not just our government. I mean, not just to say, that the U.S. government would do this. All of them would. They kind of went there in the last episode because they bombed, or was it the previous episode? Anyway, where they talked about bombing
the city.
The
city. That was the last episode.
Because, there's...
You ever watched a movie and thought, like, this is just visually amazing, and I just love the way it looks, and the colors are amazing. Well, our friends over at Movie Palette have come up with these great pieces of art that you could put up on your wall to show your love of movies without really necessarily being overly dramatic about it. Think of a movie barcode kind of thing, where you can look at the colors and know what the movie is, but it's very, very subtle. If you know us, we are into Tron Legacy. The music and the lights and the color itself is just amazing. Just to give you an idea of what they have. Go to moviepalette.com, find your own personal favorite movie, your movie color palette, and have it hang on your wall. At checkout, put in Pop Culture 15 to get 15% off. Thank you, Movie Palette, for sponsoring this video. Link is in the description down below. And don't forget, use Pop Culture 15 at checkout to get 15% off your order.
However many, 8 billion people on the planet now?
Right.
You're just going to have 8 billion infected zombie things running around.
Right.
So, it's the kind of the same thing as First Contact? Is it First Contact? where the Biederman comet is
Yeah,
coming to Earth, and they set up the bunkers, and they only so many people get to go, and if you're
yeah,
over 55 or whatever, you don't. It's the same
yeah.
concept,
Deep
right?
impact, deep impact.
Deep end. There
Yeah,
you go.
there we go. Uh,
Um, just trying to save as many people as is logistically possible.
right. It was a somber moment of, again, levelty for the real world. And it's a conversation that needs to be had, because you're talking about Fedra kind of being this overlord government, and we kind of looking into this universe. We're sitting there looking at it and going, they wouldn't do this, and we all have to pause and go, yeah,
Well, and it helps you understand how it got to that point too.
yeah, totally. But really, what this episode is Bill and Frank's love story. Now, uh, they just talked about it in the after show. Neil Dunkerman said, if we were when we were breaking the story, if we had something that was equal to or worse than what we had in the story already, we weren't going to change anything. And then if we came across something that was better, we were. And the story of Bill and Frank is one of those directly changed from the game to this adaptation. Now, the first two episodes, we've gotten shot for shot, to a T, line for line, blocking cinematography of the game. And this is the first big, huge departure. Uh, I, about halfway through this episode, said, I don't believe they're doing this. This is so good. To tell a love story between two men with beards, and they're
There's
aging.
so much hair.
There's so much hair. You have running water and it's hot. Like clean this up. No. Um. But to have an open gay romance, not just a love story, a
Yeah.
true romance of their lives together,
Yeah.
is something I didn't know I wanted in this show.
Well, and like they kind of explained too in the after, which is really what hit me while we were watching this. It's just the taking a moment to understand or show the audience what life for one man, two men, man, woman, whatever. That's not the point. The point is these small lives and what happened to them over the last 20 years, what it would be like to, there's and Joel kind of makes a comment, what were you, a prepper or whatever,
Right.
and this is kind of it. If you're going to be a prepper, this is what you have to look forward to.
Yeah.
I mean, your life is going to become very small, which in this world is not. I mean, that's what life in general is going to be. You're either living in the QZ or you're fighting for your life every single day.
Right.
But just the small, like, Frank painting and
Yeah.
them, and um, Billy was just into, he was this was who he was before, so he's into making sure they're
Being a
safe and
survivalist.
yeah,
Yeah.
setting up all this stuff, and Frank wanting to go to the boutiques, and I'm gonna basically set up house in this whole little town,
Yeah.
and all that, and just kind of a look inside of how what their lives would then become in this kind of survivalist mode.
I like that they were spending. How do I word this without spoiling anything for you? I like that they're spending time on the humanity of this game and this story, more than just the scary zombie part of it.
Well, yeah, and that was kind of what I was when I said I kind of came to this realization in the middle of this.
Yeah.
It was, it it is the humanity. Like, we're gonna take this whole episode. I mean, they still showed a little bit, to get you to understand that, or still remember that it's, still a zombie
Yeah,
thing.
yeah,
And there were the raiders
yeah,
too, right? So not only, and they go through that in Walking Dead too. Not only do you have the infected to worry about, but all the other survivors who have, gone off the deep end. And then I guess you'll probably get to it, so I'll save this for later.
I, the kiss? Are we?
No,
No,
no, no.
no. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Well, I was just gonna, when Frank gets old and Bill's like having to, help him in and out of bed, and I mean, I
They don't say it, but I think it was MS.
yeah, that's kind of what I thought
Yeah,
too,
yeah,
just because they had said that Frank was younger, and then they talked about an MRI and this kind of stuff, and so yeah, I kind of got maybe it was MS too, but um, like when they kind of showed him, I was just like, yeah, I think I'd be done. I'd be done, and
yeah,
if I was Bill, I'd be like, yeah, I'm done too, and then that's where they went, and I
yeah.
was like, okay,
That's a huge departure from the game. Uh, Bill and Frank are mentioned together during the game,
yeah,
and they had a fight, which I like that they had a fight in the episode. So the game players are like, "Oh, here it comes, here it comes." Um, but when Joel and Ellie get there, Bill and Frank aren't together anymore in the game, and then um, Frank, uh, Bill finds Frank hanging. He hangs himself. Um, and they don't really kind of talk about it, but it kind of comes across as he just had enough
yeah,
of everything,
yeah,
and that Bill has a moment. He was something. He was somebody I cared for, and there's like a pause. Somebody that was important to me. So he in his rashness couldn't allow himself
to say you loved
to
him
say
or
he
whatever,
loved him and
yeah,
stuff like that.
yeah,
So and Bill helps Joel get across town, and they get car parts to fix one of the trucks, and they get the truck, and that's how they get to Philadelphia, which is the next episode, which is, um, but the departure from that to Bill deciding that Bill and Frank staying together until Frank can't go on anymore, and Bill deciding, and he even says like, my whole purpose was to take care of you,
yeah,
and my purpose is done.
yeah,
And the note that he leaves for Joel, he says about it there too, and he tells Joel to take care of Tess. Well, we know as an audience that Tess is
right,
gone.
right, but they didn't know that. Bill didn't know that when
Bill
he
didn't
wrote
know
the
that,
note.
but now Joel has lost really his two friends
Yeah,
and his romantic partner. I won't say they were boyfriend girlfriend or anything more, like romantic partner that happened to be romantic at times. Um, so he's lost everybody, and Bill gives him the lesson of save who you can,
yeah,
which is the same lesson that Tess gave on
yeah,
the last episode, and protect who you can. And now Joel has this quarry, this package that he's getting to be emotionally connected to. Going back to the first scene of them in the woods, Joel makes a little monument, puts his hand in the creek, which probably felt great because his hand's probably
yeah,
still aching. And Ellie and Joel have a moment, and Ellie tells him, "You took this job on your own.
yeah,
Stop blaming me."
yeah,
And Joel like came to the realization, yeah, you're right. So we have all of this stuff to lay out, and the emotional kind of connection that they were doing along the road, and they used the story of two men living together and having a life together as a catalyst to kind of get you to Joel, this really rough guy who's lost everyone, choosing to protect somebody that he is now starting to care for, which is now we needed this episode to spend that time to kind of get to show that there are good people in this world
yeah,
who actually do care about each
yeah,
other, and Joel needed that reminder.
yeah,
So all of this was just to get to that reminder to Joel that you need to care about somebody, and if you
yeah,
care about somebody, and she happens to be right there. Now Bill doesn't know that,
right,
but for us as the audience, there it is. She sat there the entire time while Joel processed the whole
yeah,
process everything, and
yeah,
it's so good.
yeah,
It's so good. It's amazing that they would spend a zombie world-ending apocalyptic the third episode, we paused
Yeah.
and did a love story between two men with all this. Let's talk about a couple of little details. I mentioned it when we were watching the episode. Um, the first real moment between Bill and Frank. Frank kisses Bill, and how it's intimate and um war received. It was I don't know what the word is. um, it was it was something that he wanted. It wasn't abrasive. It wasn't
Yeah, yeah. Like a lot of times, like especially with homosexual kisses, the receiver is like shocked.
it's shocked, but it's also such a a departure from the last episode with the kiss
Yeah, yeah,
to Tess and the invasion
yeah,
of
yeah,
her privacy of her
yeah,
person. So you have that as the last kind of scene for us in the
yeah,
last episode,
yeah.
and everybody spent the last week talking about it, and then we're 15 minutes, 20 minutes into this
Yeah,
episode, and we have this moment of pause that no, kissing is good,
yeah.
especially between two people who care for each other, who
Right,
eventually do love each other.
right.
And and
Just not
so
between those fungus things
uh,
and the
yeah,
thingies coming out of
no. But that I just the dichotomy between the two scenes, it was very, very well done. And I don't want to say it was uh I don't want to say it was overly jarring, because it for some people, seeing Nick Offerman kiss another man
mouth.
may be jarring, but I, it's the the purpose of the kiss, I think, is much more important
Yeah,
than the actual, like,
yeah. And
who it was.
honestly, I mean, when we were watching it, and and like Frank's got like a tear rolling down his eye because they're in this horrible, horrible situation, and you can't trust anybody, and he's just trying to get to Boston, and then he falls in this pit and he thinks Bill's going to kill him and all of this, and then it turns into this,
Yeah,
and connection with another human being that's that you can care for and that cares for you and all of that, and so there was a lot of emotion in that, but uh, I just felt like having it be two men made it mean more to me, like that whole thing with the
I think it means a lot more that it's two men, but I also think it means a lot more because it's that type of man.
right.
It's that type of
Right.
guy who was a survivalist. He had marine stuff on his walls.
Yeah.
Like, he was the gruff rumble. I'm not gonna. I've cut myself off in the world. And
Yeah.
even in the note, he talked about when the when the world died, I was happy, and then I realized that I never really had the right person in my life
Yeah.
to be there
Yeah.
with me and
Yeah.
for me.
Yeah.
And so when he finally did, he understood all of those feelings and emotions that he had for
Yep.
so long, and
Yep.
so it was just
Yep.
so pitch perfect all the way over. Nick Offerman, and I'm going to have you say his name because I couldn't say it
Murray
right.
Bartlett.
Murray Bartlett. Um, they carry this episode. Their emotion, their love, their like, just subtle touches. The strawberry scene, like, it's everything that you like. It was a true romance, and it only works with the two of them nailing it out, like,
Yeah.
nailing it,
Yeah.
everything,
Yeah.
and they weren't afraid to be intimate with us as the audience, the camera, and with each other on camera.
Yeah.
And that's just not something that happens very often with people who I'm pretty sure Nick Offerman. I think I've seen pictures of his wife. Um, uh, I don't know about Murray. I don't know, whatever. But it's typically not something we see on TV, because people will complain that Jesus doesn't want gay people, and it
Right.
really doesn't have to do with that. This was an allegory for Joel to learn to love again, and we
Yeah.
as an audience had to spend that time to get there.
Yeah. It wasn't. for shock value,
Nope.
or you know, it it in and of itself didn't really um move the story forward. The fact that it was two men didn't really move the story forward. But like I said, I felt like it had more of an impact emotionally because it was.
Right.
Um,
Right.
but yeah, I thought they did.
I just
It
I
was awesome.
that's it. I mean, that's my criticism. Like that's it. Like it's everything they've done in this show has been pitch perfect for me.
Yeah.
And it's already been picked up for season 2. We gotta get through the next 3 episodes,
Uh,
and then we have to deal with the end of the season. And then
and you didn't finish the second game, right?
no, but I have watched the cutscenes and
Okay.
I know the story. I know what happens. I know where we get at, and I'm very interested to see how they maybe set up some of that in this process as we get there. But that's a different conversation for a different time. But uh, the only other thing I want to talk about is the preview we have. They're going to Philadelphia. Philadelphia was, for me, the hardest part of the game to play, um, because you were no longer fighting the zombies; you were fighting people.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so it's fun shooting zombies or whatever, but when it becomes people, it's a very different kind of conversation.
Yeah. Yeah.
And like you were talking about earlier, the people who, like in The Walking Dead, we're gonna make a lot of conversations about Walking Dead. Just
Everybody else is too. I
it's
mean,
just it's the closest allegory we have
yeah.
right now for
Yeah.
story this kind of
Yeah.
storytelling. But there are people in the real world who will take advantage of whatever they can,
Yeah. Yeah.
and it's
Uh, we all just lived through a pandemic for the last 2 years, 3 years. We know there's people out there that are just gonna lose their shit and oops, and and start doing crazy, just out there stuff.
just look at the guy who bought the rights to insulin and then jacked up the price 3,000%.
Yeah, that didn't have to do with the pandemic. He was just a
He was,
douche.
but that
But
those kind of people exist, and now you are in this essentially lawless, governmentless time.
yeah,
And I'm very interested in kind of how they handle all of that as we
yeah,
in the next episode.
yep,
And I'm wondering if they're going to spend. So this is episode 3 of 10. I'm wondering if they're going to spend 2 episodes in and around and everything that has to deal with Philadelphia, because really they'll have to do an episode of them traveling, and then they'll be in the winter by the time they get to Dakotas, Kansas, Wyoming, like kind of that far. So it's interesting to kind of see again how we've played the thus of us playing the game, know the story, how they're kind of like going to lay out where we're going, because we know where they're going. And so this is one of those times where I'm glad that they made a departure from the game, because I felt that this episode was so impactful and so important and so good that us as the game players are like, that was different. Our kids are having a conversation right now on Facebook about how the episode was different than what was in the game, and it's still all amazing.
yeah, yeah, yep.
That is our critiques and reaction and conversation about Last of Us a long time ago, or just a long time ago. Long time ago. I lied. I'm saying it twice in this episode. Let us know what you thought of our reaction and review in the comments down below. Please be nice. That's a requirement around here. Like this video, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell for notifications. Follow us on all the social media stuff: Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok. Links in the description down below. And until next time, cult members, good afternoon, good evening, and good night now.